I'm close to finishing the electrical part of the restoration of the Philips BX230U chassis. Now, aside from that electronic part, I still need, of course, to finish the tuning needle movement mechanism, which you see here, all this jumble of wire. So I will have to find a way to repair that too. But that, honestly, is a purely mechanical problem and has nothing to do with electronics, actually. So that I will do last. Now, as you recall, I repaired temporarily the power resistor here, which is put in series with the output of the B plus rectifier, which is this tube. Now I rigged temporarily these resistors you see there, hanging below the green one, just to be able to test the chassis. And you'll remember that this tube here, which is the mixer local oscillator tube, if I'm not mistaken, and which is a UL41, is gassy. It's bad. It's really bad. So I bought a new mixer local oscillator tube, and as you can see, it's a UL41. It's not new old stock as per se. It's a scavenged tube which somebody put for sale, up for sale on eBay. It was reasonably priced, and according to what I read on the advertisement, the tubes should still be functional and even reasonably good. So we'll have a try with this new tube. Also, I looked and looked and looked around, and I just couldn't find an exact replica or even new old stock similar to this original wire wound power resistor, the green one I mean. Inside were 3 resistors of 180 ohms, 200 ohms, and 450 ohms, I think, at the end. Now, like I said, try as I might, I just couldn't find a replica or new old stock resistors like this one. So in the end, I'll have to resort to using modern power resistors like these to simulate the original green power resistor, the ceramic one, on the chassis. Now you might say, hey, I only see 2 resistors here and you just mentioned 3. Well, yes, I did indeed mention 3 resistors, but the reason why you see only 2 is because if you take a close look at the radio chassis, hang on, I'll pull out the rectifier tube so you can have a better look. So if you look closely, you'll see there are actually only 3 wires running to the power resistors. This one here, this one there, and this one. Now, the 200 ohms resistor, which is supposed to be in between these two, is really rather useless because the power running through this wire here and thus through this resistor and down through this wire again into the chassis went through the combination of the 200 ohms and the 450 ohms resistor. So what I did was I bought a power resistor which was as close as possible to 650 ohms, and that turned out to be a 680 ohms resistor, as you can see here. Now this one is definitely over-dimensioned. I mean, it's calculated for 50 watts, and I think the resistor, the original one, is maximum of 25 watts, and I don't even think it was 20 watts, but rather closer to 10 watts. Still, it's the closest I could get to power resistors which aren't too big and will still do the work on the chassis. So I will have to mount these two power resistors in series, something like this for example, and then put the three wires like this onto each of the contacts, and that should work properly. Now you'll notice the chassis is really rather small, so it's out of the question to place those power resistors anywhere where I like, since the chassis is so small. But you'll notice that in the middle of the top of the chassis there is this open space. You see it here. Now if I could carefully mount the resistors like this, let's see, it's just an estimate, okay? So I put the big one there and I put the small one somewhere around here. Well, as you can see, there's plenty of space to put down the two power resistors. Granted, it still mars a little bit the original look of the radio, but this is a clear case where I have no choice. Okay, yes, I know. I could have tried to place them underneath the chassis, but take a good look. If I'm going to place the power resistors underneath, well, with a little bit of squeezing, I probably could put them somewhere here in this area, but these power resistors get fairly warm and they would be awfully close to a lot of electronic parts, you know, capacitors mainly, and also a few resistors. And also there is already a power resistor here which gets reasonably toasty. So if I would put these power resistors, hang on. If I would put these power resistors underneath here, together with this one, which is already mounted, then this part of the chassis would get very, very warm. And frankly, I'm not too fond of the idea of doing that. So, rather than trying to put them out of sight underneath the chassis, I think I'm going to place them on top. Although I might still have a go and look whether I can put these power resistors somewhere inside the chassis, here somewhere, but it would be mighty cramped inside, and well, I just don't like the idea of it. So, like I said, I will probably end up mounting them on top of the chassis. Now, okay, some of you will say, yeah, and what about the back of the chassis? Well, technically speaking, yes, I could mount the power resistors on the back of the chassis. However, the problem is that the back plate of the cabinet comes flush with the back side of the chassis. So the plate runs really flush with the back side. So there, if I would place the power resistors here, well, there would simply be no place or no space for the back plate. So that's out of the question too. Actually, well, you know, I even toyed with the idea, if you take a good look at the power resistor grip, which you see here, and part of it is here, then technically speaking I could mount a power resistor like this. Yeah, I could do that and then mount a small one, for example, here. So at a right angle with the big one. It's a possibility, but well, I don't know. I'm sort of undecided which position would be the best. And the very simple reason for it is that I want to try to keep it as authentic as possible. But we're really, any way I look at it, authenticity probably won't be quite possible. So I'll end up either mounting the power resistors as you see now, or maybe I'll just put them both down on top of the chassis in this area. I'll leave in the green one though, but disconnected, completely disconnected, just for authenticity's sake. So that's it. Now, once I've done that, then I still need to mount a fuse holder, because as you know by now, I always mount a fuse holder and a fuse therefore in any appliance, so in this case in any radio that doesn't have a fuse. So must I repeat that it is unwise and very dangerous actually to have any kind of appliance without a fuse. You know, this little thing, which costs you, roughly $2, can save your house and your life. So even if it's aesthetically not very pleasing on an old chassis, I strongly advise to mount one. Anywhere, it doesn't really matter where, just as long as it is well connected. So anyway, I'll mount this fuse holder too, somewhere, probably underneath the chassis, since it doesn't give off any kind of heat. And well, if it's properly repaired, well, the chances that the fuse will blow are quite small. So I can just go ahead and hide the fuse holder underneath the chassis somewhere. Right, so when I've mounted the power resistors and the fuse holder, and I've inserted the new local oscillator mixer tube into its socket, then we can try again to power up the radio. I did end up mounting the new power resistors in the position you see them now. Now, the reason why I did it that way is twofold. First of all, I didn't want to drill into the chassis to attach them, and very conveniently there was a little hole at the top of the original power resistor stand. So here, where you see the little nut and a little bit of the screw. So there was a hole in there originally. So I simply used that hole to attach them with a stainless steel screw, a 2 mil stainless steel screw. I also place back the original power resistor in its original position, but it's completely dysfunctional. I mean, I disconnected it completely. It's only there for show, yes, for the sake of of maintaining its original look of the chassis. Also, I didn't really like the idea of placing those two shiny golden power resistors flat on top of the chassis, because, well, if I would have had to attach them to the chassis, and most likely I would have had to either drill into the chassis or glue them to the chassis, which in my opinion is rather destructive. So I didn't want to do that. Finally, if you take a look at the chassis from the back, let me turn it. Well, the way the power resistors are placed inside the cabinet, well, they will be rather unobtrusive. So, sure, you will notice them, but they won't be bothering much. And finally, I also needed to be certain that those, especially the big new power resistor, wouldn't touch anything. And as you can see, it comes pretty close to the UL41, but there is about 3 mil space between it, which is perfect because over the UL41 you need to slide this metal shield. But luckily the metal shield is very thin metal. It's steel, yeah, but it's very thin. So it'll slide very snugly and very nicely between that gap you see there, or rather into the gap you see here, between the resistor and the tube itself. So really it's the ideal solution, I think. Well, ideally, of course, it would be better to have a power resistor like this one, but like I said, I couldn't find any, and neither old stock or reproductions. So maybe in a future, in the near future, we might be able to find one, and in that case I will of course place the new one instead of this one and remove those golden power resistors. Well, golden colored power resistors. Okay, once that is done, I need to mount the fuse holder. And I did decide to place it underneath the chassis, and actually I will most probably place it somewhere here, where it doesn't bother anything. And okay, granted, it's underneath the chassis, but if I did a good job of it of repairing this chassis, the likelihood that the fuse will blow is very, very small. So it doesn't really bother to have the fuse somewhere located underneath the chassis. The main thing is that there is a fuse, yeah, just for safety's sake. I will place it somewhere around here underneath the chassis, not too close to this edge, because the chassis is supported by this edge in the cabinet like this, yeah, so it slides back and forth over a kind of bakelite rail. So I need to place the fuse a little bit back into the chassis, but that'll be fine. And then the final thing I need to do is to investigate why the dial light or the dial light bulb burns very, very faintly. Now, it is my opinion that it probably draws way too much current. In fact, more current than the circuitry can supply. So, because this bulb is rated for 450 milliamps, if I'm not mistaken, and and 6 volts. So, I think this bulb is really a bit too heavy a load for the power supply. So I will probably need to use a much smaller, lighter light bulb. And then before I fire up the chassis, I will have a very last go at measuring the original resistors that were inside or underneath the chassis. Just to make sure they are of the proper value still, that there are no shorts or anything like that. And when I'm pretty certain that that's okay, then I will place the new UL41 into the chassis instead of this one, the old one, and a rectifier tube, and then we'll have a go at firing it up. I measured all the coils and just a few of the resistors that I thought might be bad, but they check out more or less. Well, old resistors, they never measure up to their specified resistance anyway, but they are within tolerance, let's say 10-15%, so it shouldn't cause really a problem, I think. Well, if there is a problem, it will rather be a short or something like that. Now, I placed the new UL41 in its designed place, and I also put the shield on the tube, just to be on the safe side, and see whether the chassis will function. I also measured whether the tuning capacitor has any shorts or not, and it doesn't seem to short, so I think that won't be a problem either. For the rest, well, like I said, I mounted the power resistors, the new ones, and below, if I swivel the chassis around, you see that I also mounted the fuse holder, as I said, below the chassis, and I mounted it directly onto the switch, which turns out to be a rather good spot for it. So that shouldn't cause any problems either. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to power up the chassis for a short while and see whether it will function or not. I must admit I'm curious, but well, we shouldn't be disappointed if all we hear are just a few cracklings coming out of the speaker. I connected the speaker up to the output of the audio transformer with some crocodile clamps, because I don't want to mount the speaker to it just yet. You see, it's hardwired, and if I have to work on the chassis with a hardwired, directly wired speaker onto the output transformer, well, it's simply not handy. Okay, so well, I suggest we give it a go. The chassis is off. Oh yeah, remember, this chassis is a hot chassis. So just to be on the safe side, not to electrocute myself, I'm going to put a rubber mount over the shaft of the switch. I'm pretty confident I won't get zapped by the chassis, but well, it's better to take precautions than none at all. Oh, by the way, I mounted a lighter kind of light bulb for the illumination of the dial scale, and I think, well, I'm pretty sure it will draw much less current than the one I had in before. Actually, the one I had before was this one, and that was around about 2 watts, which is, let's face it, a little bit too bright probably. Well, not bright, a little bit too heavy actually on the circuitry, because well, this draws about 450 milliamps, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, exactly. 0.45 amps, so which is 450 milliamps. That's quite a bit of current. So no, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use that little light bulb, which is 6 volts, but if I'm not mistaken, it only draws around about 100 milliamps, so that should work. Okay, well, let's give it a try, why don't we? And let's see what it does. So I'm going to pull up the power. If it wants to focus. Yeah, there we go. We need to land in the green zone. Around about there. Yeah, okay. So, well, here it goes. Going to switch off the light, the main light, and we're going to see whether the filaments oops. Well, there was a very short flash. Okay, all the filaments are glowing. I think you can see them, all of them. Yeah, the speaker hums. But that's about it. Okay, I switched it off again because there was a bright flash, and I don't know where the flash came from. So, I have no clue what went wrong. So, hang on. I just need to take a few measurements, check underneath the chassis if everything is okay, and then we can give it a second try. There's nothing burned, there's nothing wrong with the chassis. Also, the power resistors do get quite toasty, I have to say. They are not burning hot, but they are really unpleasantly hot. So in the end, it turns out that I probably made the right choice of resistor. you know. Oh yeah, it's really, really hot. So, yeah, well, we'll see how the radio will perform now. So I checked whether there are any short circuits or anything. There are none. Everything seems connected as it should be. So we're going to give it another try. I also removed temporarily the shield from the UL41 to see whether the filament will glow or not. Because remember, this tube is newly acquired. I don't know if it works properly or not. So, well, let's give it a try, shall we? Okay. The speaker is attached. Everything is okay. The shield is here. Right. Well, there we go. Okay. Just keep an eye on all the tubes. Okay. Yeah, all the tubes seem to work. I see filament glow, so that's okay. I also hear something coming from the speaker. I don't know what it is, but it's not a bad sign. Okay. Yeah, so let's see if we can tune something.
David is appointed to be king over Israel, but the king of Israel is the servant of Jehovah. He is the servant of...
Oh yeah, the radio works, guys. That's good news. Now, mind you, there's only a lousy little antenna here in it, which is represented by this rod. Yeah. So I'm going to see whether with some crocodile clamps I can improve on the reception. Okay, let's see. I'm at maximum volume, so that's a German transmitter. Quite sensitive to tuning.
Donc enfin, humain, ceci doit nous interpeller. Au nom de quelle religion aujourd'hui a-t-on le droit?
Okay, that's a French AM transmitter. So, but reception is not too good. I think, you know, it needs a better antenna to get better reception. So let's see whether we can improve on it. Ow! Oh darn. Okay, I'm trying to juggle all sorts of stuff at the same time, but okay. Well, let's see if we can get something else out of the radio. Oh, by the way, the light bulb for the illumination of the dial front is, well, doesn't seem to work. It just lights up brightly when you start up the radio and then it just dies away. I wonder why that is. You know, it's been like this ever since I got the chassis working. And now this is a very small light bulb, so normally it doesn't draw that much current. Well, that's another problem I'll have to fix. Okay, so let's continue with finding stations. I don't know on which band I am. I'm just presuming I'm on the AM band. Okay, that's a German transmitter. Okay, you know what? We're going to place back the shield on the UL41 because I'm not sure that without the shield it will give proper reception. So, ow! It is quite hot, the tube, so I need to wait a little bit so that it can cool down. So I'm going to place the shield back over the UL41. But for that, I need to remove it because I just can't slide on the shield while it's in its place on the chassis. So let me see whether I can use a rag to pull it out because it's quite hot. You know, I keep forgetting that these vacuum tubes really get very, very, very hot once they start functioning, you know. Those filaments put out quite some heat, and one tends to forget that indeed these tubes get very hot. So, okay, let me put back the tube. Ow, damn it, the tube is hot. Okay, so there we go. The shield is in place, and it gets hot immediately. It gets hot immediately, the shield. Okay, by the way, the new tube seems to function normally. That too is good news. So it means I bought the proper kind of tube. Okay. Right. There we go. I think yes, it's okay. And the power resistors are hot. And I mean, now they are burning hot. They are really incredibly hot. So I'm actually not astonished. The original power resistor, this one, blew out at a certain stage because these are dissipating quite a bit of heat. Wow. And I mean, when I say they are hot, they are hot. Even the piece of metal to which I attach them is hot. So imagine how much heat this resistor must have dissipated in its time. I mean, really a huge amount of heat. So, okay, well, the output transformer is okay though, that's cool. And the can with the new electrolytics is cold, so that's good. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of switching it on again. So, here we go. And by the way, like I said a minute ago, I am just assuming I'm on the AM band. But, you know, I just put it in this position. But I'm not sure. But I'm guessing this is the AM band. Okay, so, well, here we go. Let's give it another try. Okay, there go the filaments. I think you can see them glow. Okay, so that's the German radio, or the German station we're receiving. So let's see if we can receive something else. And no, I didn't give the radio an alignment because I assumed the IF coils must be okay. I think that's an Arab radio transmitter.
Schon Ordnungsmerkmale für die Gliederung dieser vielen Dokumente? Nein.
D'une certaine manière, ce soulèvement va complètement retourner l'opinion dans les jours qui suivent le 25
Okay,
Les gens crient vive les flics, vive la police.
That's a French transmitter, and by the way, I was touching the antenna, so I was playing antenna.
Propre hiérarchie, que la France célèbre aujourd'hui. L'article 434-5 du Code de déontologie impose en 2014 aux policiers l'obéissance à leur hiérarchie. Sauf, le code est important, dans le cas où l'ordre de manifester.
Okay, so that's a French transmitter. Now let's go on. Oh, I see some smoke coming off. Hang on. Something is smoking. And I don't know what it is. Hang on. I don't know where the smoke is coming from. Ah, okay. Now I know where the smoke is coming from. Okay. Yeah, well, that's a bit of bummer. The smoke. Yeah, the smoke is coming off of the shield around the UL41. I think that the paint on the shield is causing the smoke. Yeah, I think the paint on the shield is causing the tube to give off smoke. That's a bummer. I didn't expect the tube to get so hot, but apparently it gets really hot. That's a bit of a bummer. Okay, well, we'll see. I think I can fix that, no problem at all. Okay, let's get on with it. Let's try another frequency range. I don't know which frequency range this is, but could be long wave, could be short wave. Oh yeah, I'm receiving something, but very faintly. It's very faint, it's incredibly faint. Okay. This is the third band. Okay, I need to switch off the radio again because it's starting to smoke. But like I said, the smoke is oh yeah, definitely coming off the tube shield. Well, it's quite obvious that paint I used on the tube shield is not exactly suited. I removed the shield from the UL41. By the way, the shield itself doesn't look burnt or anything. I guess it must be the solvent in the paint that is slowly cooking and giving off the smoke. Anyway, we'll see. If it still smokes, then there must be something left in maybe in the socket of the UL41. We'll see. No biggie. And yeah, the resistors and all the tubes cool down after maybe a minute or so, or maybe even 2 minutes. So be warned, if you're going to handle a chassis which just worked a minute ago, a chassis with vacuum tubes, be warned those tubes get really, really hot. Okay, I attached a wire, this blue wire you see here, as an antenna to the radio. It's about, I would say, 6 or 7 meters long, which would translate to about roughly 20 feet. So I hope that will improve reception somewhat. So I put it back on the, well, presumably on the AM band. So let's see what difference it makes without the shield on the UL41 and the big antenna. As you can see, let me show it again. The light bulb for the dial illumination just comes up for a few seconds, lights up, and then dies down. Why that is, I still haven't found out, and I don't have a clue. But okay, whatever, let's just give it a try, okay, shall we? Here we go. Okay. Whoa. It's much, much louder now with the antenna. Okay, that's the Arab radio station.
In den Himmel, am Ende begleiten Männer, die am Seeufer spazieren und die fragen, wer will da noch nach Hamburg? Und die beiden finden das eigentlich ganz schön, was sie sehen. Wie finden Sie persönlich die Schaffung dieser Seenlandschaft um die herum gewohnt?
Yeah.
Also erstmal waren wir auch
Okay, that's the German transmitter, and I had to turn down the volume quite a bit. So yeah, the antenna does give a difference. Okay, let's go ahead. Yeah, it does make a difference, the antenna. So let's see.
Cet après-midi, la fraîcheur sera toujours d'actualité. Il ne sera pas plus de 18 degrés à Lille, Brest et Nancy, 19 pour la capitale, 20 degrés du côté de Strasbourg, Rennes et Bourges, 22 à Toulouse, 23 à Lyon ou Bordeaux.
Okay, that's a French radio station.
Du côté du ciel, ça reste mitigé entre soleil et nuages.
And they're predicting bad weather. Well, variable weather. No clue what that is. It sounds like jazz, but I don't know whether it's an English or French radio station. So let's get on.
Which is the sticking point of the deal. Very, very sweet deal out of it. Of course, they're not making that much money from the Lockheed deal because they only own 25% of them. The other 75% belongs to an investment firm who will be getting a lot of that 20 million euros, about 16.5 million pounds, and a bit of it belongs to Sparta.
Okay, that's a British radio station. Well, I'm assuming it's an English radio station. So let's go ahead. Yeah, there's another transmitter here. Very faint. I can hear it almost in the background, but I think it's a French one. Well, I've got no clue what that is. I'm assuming it's an Arab transmitter or maybe even a Turkish one or something. And it's at the very end of the dial. Okay.
Nicht genau wissen, wie sieht es in der Zukunft aus und die andere Welt, nämlich die Leute, die hinten sind natürlich eher aktivere Leute und sind natürlich auch von ihrer ganzen existenziellen Leute, sonst könnten sie das nicht machen, was sie da machen. Und für uns war immer total interessant, wie gehen diese Welten zusammen? Also gibt es da einen Austausch?
Okay, so let's switch bands. Let's go to another band. Don't ask me which band that is, but let me see. I switched down one. Well, according to the plate here, the front plate, it's probably long wave. I'm not sure, but I think it's long wave. Okay, so let's give it a try. Yeah. Volume is at maximum. Oh yeah, a French transmitter. Interesting. Notice there's no more smoke. So it was effectively the paint on the shielding that was smoking. Well, aside from that lonely French transmitter, there's not much. Okay, so let's switch to yet another band. Actually, I'm not sure I switched to another band. It could be that I'm in the pickup position. So let's go the other end of the. No. Well, if there's anything on that band, no way I can hear it. No, there's nothing on that band. But well, remember shortwave. There aren't that many transmitters on shortwave. I imagine. Not anymore. So yeah, that's a bit of a bummer, you could say. But okay, on long wave and medium wave, so on long wave and in AM band, we still do have reception. Okay, this is long wave. I'm at maximum volume, mind you, so you can imagine how incredibly faint the radio transmitter must be. And it's French. Okay, so let's see if I can find anything else. No clue what that is. Well, this is probably a radio transmitter too, but whatever it transmits, I can't understand it. Okay, let's go to the AM band.
Cooperstown und der Otsego-See im Staat New York, das ist die Gegend, in der Fenimore Cooper seine Geschichten um den Jäger und Fallensteller ansiedelte. Und genau dort
okay, let's conclude with one more thing. I just want to hear what difference the tone switch does give. What difference does it make? So let's switch it over. I'm afraid I will need to clean it. It doesn't do much. Okay, well, let's wind down this video by saying that the radio functions reasonably well, considering it's still
Syria, Iran und Irak.
Considering that the chassis is still only, well, 75% finished. Well, we have success anyway. We succeeded in making the radio function.